everybody, how are you doing? Hey, that's better, that's better. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about customer experience. And you might be wondering, what has customer experience got to do with us? And you might be even wondering, customer experience, what the heck is that? Is anyone thinking, what the heck is customer experience? Oh, good, you all know what it is. Shall I go off then and leave you to it? I'll start with the story. This young chappy here is my nephew, Ryan. Anyone else a Villa fan in the room? Okay, Ryan is a big Villa fan, so at the moment he's really, really happy. And I'm a Man United fan, and I'm very, very sad about what's going on. Ryan and I have a really close relationship. He's my youngest brother's son. And the reason that Ryan and I have a really close relationship is that a few years before Ryan was born, I had a son, and unfortunately he passed away and he was called Ryan. So when my brother was expecting his second child, he came to me and said, I'd love to name him after your son. I'd love to name him Ryan. And I thought, oh, what a lovely thing to do. And it was beautiful. So we're connected on that level. But the other reason that Ryan and I are really close, despite our football differences, is that he's the youngest. He's one of the youngest in our family. He's still at that age where he's quite tactile. He likes his hugs. All the other kids in our family have grown up. They're teenagers. They live in their room. They play Call of Duty or whatever it is they play these days. They grunt at you and never really communicate. But he still loves his hugs. He loves his hugs, he loves his tactile, and he and I have a really close relationship. A few years ago, we went on holiday to Barcelona. Has anyone in the room been to Barcelona, ever? Yeah, lovely place. If you've never been, you should go. And on the way back from this few days that we had, Ryan is walking along with me. Now, two things I should tell you. Ryan is full of energy. He's one of those kids that will just grab your hand while you're walking and he'll swing it around, and we'll be walking down the road like this, and then he'll go into a skip and a hop and a jump and he'll run off. And he's always just buzzing around. And the other thing I should tell you is on the way to the airport, I turn into commando dad. The kind of dad that has to hold all the passports, has to hold all the boarding passes, and walks about 50 yards in front of his family, and they're all trying to keep up because I need to get there on time. So I'm in my kind of zone heading towards the Jet 2 counter because I want to check in, make sure there's no problems, and I'm off on a mission. He's like weaving in and out of me like a Formula One driver, chicaning this way, chicaning that way. I'm like, Ryan, will you just stand still? Like, we're getting to the counter, you need to behave yourself. And he's still buzzing this way and that way, and we get to the Jet 2 counter and these two red ropes that are waiting for us to check in. And I'm standing there, and he jumps over that rope, and then he jumps over that rope, and he's doing it again. I'm going, would you just stand still? In a minute, you're going to fall over, you're going to hurt yourself. If you don't stand still, I'm going to tell them to put you in the hold. And he turns to me and he goes, you can't tell them to do that. And with perfect timing, a Jet 2 member of staff was stood watching all of this unfold. And she slowly turned to him and said, oh, yes, we can. Come here. Come here. So he trundles over. Right, son. Well, now we need to see if you're too big to go on the flight. So I need you to stand in this little cage. You know the little cage where you put your bag? You know, the little thing that Ryanair used to get more money out of you because it's always too small for your bag. Well, Jet 2 have one that works properly, right? So it's there, the cage thing. And she goes, in you get. He looks at her and goes, no, in you get. So he thinks, right. Now, Ryan is smart. He knows that if he goes above the line, that means he's going to go in the hold. So what he does, he gets in and he crouches down like this. And he's there. He's like, no. Stand up. Makes him stand up and he's above the line. Ooh. You're a bit too big to go in the cabin, so we're going to have to put you in the hold. So she walks him over, and her colleague's now in on the joke as well. Her colleague's at the belt. On you get. What do you mean? On you get. Come on, we've got to weigh you. So he stands on, and now they're having a little conference. Oh, yeah, I think it's a bit too much. It's a bit too heavy to go. A bit too heavy to go in the overhead. He needs to go in the luggage. She gets a little sticky, the baggage sticker, peels it off, sticks it on his T-shirt. He now thinks he's going in the hold. And he's stood there frozen. And everyone's looking at him. And then he looks at me. I'm like, are you going to behave yourself? Yeah. All right, then come on, we'll get you on the plane. And he gets on the plane. Now, here's the interesting thing. Who do you think Ryan wants to fly with every time we go on holiday? Who do you want to fly with? Jet2. Is it because of the aeroplane? Is it because of their snazzy booking website? No. Is it because of their app? Why is it? Because of the way they made him feel. The product of customer experience is memory. The product of customer experience is memory. Now, our memories shape our future decisions. Do you know that we're designed to forget as human beings? Did you know that? That's what I tell my wife whenever she tells me, why haven't you remembered this? We're designed to forget. But the things that we remember, we normally remember for a lifetime. And that's because they're normally attached with a set of emotions. Our memories contain emotions. Our emotions drive behavior. And normally when I'm talking to organizations, I'm talking to them about delivering great customer experiences that bring back customers time and time again. Because we heard a great presentation about branding, and that's part of the equation, right? You all understand that. But marketing and customer experience are the other sides of the coin. See, marketing is all about the invitation. It's the charisma. It's the cologne. I think kids call it the Riz these days. I shouldn't say that because my daughter would kill me saying that out loud. It's charisma. It's the thing that first gets you attracted. The reason that you say yes, or the reason that you go further, is the brand. The brand's giving you confidence to say, okay, I like what I see, I'm going in. And then the customer experience is what you experience once you've gone beyond the brand. And that is what decides whether you come back or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for today's presentation, I'm going to be speaking about customer experience, but using the principles that I share with organizations, but in the context of you and your careers. I'm going to be sharing with you a few ideas that I have about how you can use the principles of customer experience in your careers. And the reason I say that is because it's really about relationships. Like you are right now having a customer experience of me. When you meet each other, you're having a customer experience of each other, right? So it's really relevant to the relationships we build. So I've got a question for you. What starts with a D and ends with an E? And keep it clean. What starts with a D and ends with an E? Any guesses?
Die.
Die? Do you want to be a motivational speaker? Die. Anything else? Desire? Really great answers. You're all wrong. What starts with a D and ends with an E are my GCSE results. I was supposed to do really well at school, and I didn't. All of my teachers thought I would get A's and B's throughout my GCSEs. And when it came to the day that I opened the envelope, along with my friends, they all opened their little brown envelope. Do you still open envelopes these days? Is that how it works? Or do you get a little email with a set of emojis to tell you what grades you've got? But back then we got them in a little brown envelope. And I remember going to school and it had my name on the front. And I picked up the envelope and all of my friends were around me. I open up the envelope. I pull out my GCSE results, like maths, D. English, D. Physics, D. Design, D. I'm like, there's a bit of a pattern here. D, D, D. Home economics, cookery basically, E. Who gets an E in cookery? That's why I'm not allowed to cook at home anymore. So I got an E. But somehow, I managed to carve myself a career over the last 30 years. I started working in a bank in a contact centre, taking credit card applications on the phone. Not far from here, over on the near the NIA. You all know where the NIA, Utility Arena, what's it called now? The Utilitia Arena, I think it's called. Back near the Sea Life Centre. I used to work around there. I worked in a contact centre, taking calls for credit cards. And somehow, I managed to get from an 18-year-old in a contact centre to the C-suite of a FTSE 250 company, on the board of directors, developing strategy, shaping customer experience, and making big decisions. I don't quite know how I got there. Well, actually, I kind of do. But I want to share some of that with you today. So the 3 principles I'm going to share with you are things that I've used personally in my career. They're also principles for customer experience. The first one starts with a cricket story. So part of the reasons why I failed my exams is that I played too much cricket. I love cricket. As you can see, I'm not from around these parts. My heritage is Indian, right? If you've not noticed, it's not a tan, this is real. I'm Indian. I was born pretty much with a cricket bat in my hand. I love cricket ever since I was a kid, and I've always wanted to play it. And when I was younger, I played in the league, and I wanted to be a fast bowler. I was obsessed with being a fast bowler. I wanted to bowl quick. I wanted to take wickets. My heroes were Malcolm, and none of these names will mean anything to you, I guess, but some of them in the room might recognise Malcolm Marshall, Imran Khan, Wasim Akram, Kapil Dev, Richard Hadley. Today's world, you'd be saying James Anderson if you follow cricket. Those kind of like fast bowlers that you really take to, Glenn McGrath, all of those kind of guys. Wanted to bowl fast. So I joined this club, and I was just obsessed with trying to do that. And I wanted to be able to move the ball in the air this way and that way, because I thought it would make me really cool, because I could take loads of wickets and I could win games. And I was at practice one day, so I'm trying to do this thing, trying to get the ball to move this way and trying to get the ball to move that way. And I'm not doing a very good job, right? The ball's going over there, it's going over there, it's not landing where it's supposed to land. And at the club we had an elderly gentleman, probably in his early 60s, and his name was Alf. And Alf was like super well dressed, even though he was at a cricket field teaching us how to play cricket. Super well dressed, he had a shirt on, he had his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, he had silver hair that was slicked back with a nice sort of, I guess it was Brill cream or something in it, but it was all held in place. And really well spoken, and he came over to me and he said, "What are you trying to do?" And I told him, and he looked at me and he went, "But you're not landing any of them where you want to land them." He said, "Come here." So he took me to the nets. He got out some duct tape, tore a piece of the duct tape off, walked about halfway through the net, because we have these nets where we practice, and he put an X on the floor, like that. And then he walked me back to the front over here, and he said, "Right, what I want you to do, I want you to bowl normally, and I want you to hit that X 6 times in a row. And every time you miss, you've got to go back to 0 and start again." That's easy, I can do that. Let's do the first one, hit it. I was like, yes, got it. Looking at him going, this is dead easy. Second one, did it again. Third one missed, went back to 0. All I want you to do is hit that X. And over a period of weeks and months, I got better and better and better and better. And once I was able to hit that X 6 times in a row without going back to 0, he said, now you've got the basics done. Now you've got consistency. Now you can try the flashy stuff. So the first lesson I want to share with you is consistency is king. Consistency is king. Like in your careers, you're going to build your personal brand, just as we shared earlier. But brand, as I said, is only part of the equation. Your character comes from how people interact with you. If you only show up to work once on time, what happens? What happens? Do you think you deserve a promotion for just turning up to work once on time? No. You've got to do it consistently. If you put your hand up for a project and you go, yeah, I'll have a go at that, and you don't get picked, somebody else gets picked, and you never do it again, what's going to happen? Nothing, right? You've got to be consistent. So in my career, I learned really early on, consistency is key. If you're going to be somebody of character, turn up on time. If you're going to do something, or you say you're going to do something, do it. Be somebody who's consistent. Because it's really easy to look at the flashy, shiny things and go, oh, I'll do that, and I'll do that, and do that. But the basics is what's built on. Customer experience and organization is built on delivering the basics really, really well. Jet2 don't do luxury travel. What they do is deliver the basics really, really well. Anybody know who that is? Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso. So if you've never heard of Ted Lasso, it's a TV show on Apple TV. And he's an American guy who comes over to coach a football team. Knows nothing about the sport. It's a bit of a comedy. It's a really great show. You should check it out. And in there's a scene where Ted shares this quote by Walt Whitman. And the quote is, be curious, not judgmental. And what I want to talk to you about that is about when you are in your career and you're developing your career and you're getting into your stride of things, being able to ask great questions is really important. The most dangerous words in any business are, we've always done it that way. We've always done it that way. Lots of companies start change programs and start to get things done. And the reason that so many of them fail is not because it wasn't a good idea, it wasn't because the people weren't smart, and it wasn't because they didn't have a plan. They didn't spend enough time understanding what the problem was that they were trying to solve. Einstein once said, "Give me a problem and I'll spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes coming up with a solution." What we tend to do is spend 5 minutes thinking about the problem and 55 minutes coming up with a solution. You need to think about it and you need to ask the questions why. And this is an example, a real example from my career. So I was working in a bank and we had a problem in our contact center. Way too many calls and not enough staff to take the calls. So customers were waiting too long on the phone. They were having to hang up and call back later, and it was a bit of a mess, right? So we had some smart people say, well, we need to look at why customers are calling us, because if we understand why they're calling us, we can figure out what's going on. And so we started to look at the data. And the data told us that the number 2 reason that people were calling us was because they wanted to understand what their balance was. What's on their balance? Now, this is a credit card company, right? Not a kind of day-to-day bank account, but a credit card, right? So they wanted to know what their balance was. So we're like, okay, well, if the number 2 reason is they're ringing to get their balance, why don't we just automate that? Because other banks are doing it. You can just call up, you can punch your number in. By the way, this is in the days before an app. Like, we're talking 90s or something. You know, you probably weren't even born when I was working in there. But you had to call to get your balance, or you got a text message. So we're like, well, if they want to get the balance, if we figure out how many people are calling the balance, if we automate it and give them another way of getting it, they'll stop calling, we create capacity, and then we'll have enough people to take the rest of the calls. Makes sense, right? Logical. So we started to think about doing that, and I went, hang on a second, wait. If we're already sending their balance by text, and they can already get it by calling, and they can already get it on the website, why would so many people be calling about their balance? It just doesn't make sense. So we're like, okay, well, we need to understand why. We need to understand why what's happening. And so we did an experiment where for a couple of weeks, everybody that rang for their balance, every agent asked them, why have you called for your balance today? And did you know you could get it online? And 80% of the people that were calling for their balance weren't actually calling for their balance. They were calling for a settlement figure, because what they were about to do was transfer their business from us to a competitor. Now, if we'd have automated it, it would have made it nice and easy, we'd have reduced the calls, and we'd have never have known. And we would have lost all of those customers to a competitor. And it's only by chunking down and asking why we're doing that we got to the answer. So you should always never stop asking why. It's the most powerful question you can ask in a business. Be curious, not judgmental. Don't jump to conclusions. You know, ask great questions. And then the third one, I used to work at National Express. Does anyone use National Express in this room? Travelled? Yeah. What did you think? Good? No? I don't work there anymore, it's fine. I worked there up until July last year, and I was Chief Customer Experience Officer there. And when I first went there, it was in a bit of a mess. You know, there was lots of stuff not happening right. They weren't really that customer focused. They had a broken contact center, and I went in to try and fix it. And when I went in, I inherited this team, right? And they were like, nobody listens to us. We're trying to feed back to the other teams that this isn't working, and that's not working, and nobody's listening to us. And you know, lots of stuff about pointing fingers at everybody else. It's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. And I turned to the manager and I said, have you ever thought maybe the problem's not them? Maybe the problem's us? And she looked at me and she was like, what do you mean? How can it be us? I said, well, have you ever thought the problem's us? Because maybe we're just not telling the story in the right way. Maybe we're not telling the story in the right way because we're trying to tell them what's going wrong in their teams and their department. Maybe we don't really understand them. So I got the team to go out and spend time in other areas. Anyone heard of Toyota? Do you know Toyota? Yeah. The car brand? Yeah. Toyota have this principle called, and I'm going to say it wrong, I know I'm going to say it wrong every time I try and say it, it's called Gensu Gench Bichi, something like that. Anyway, it translates as go and see it yourself. So what they used to do was when they had senior managers and were setting up projects elsewhere, they would take that manager and put them in the place where it was to go and see it for themselves, not rely on what somebody else told them, but to go and see it for themselves so they could really understand what's happening on the front line, what they could really understand what's happening for customers. In an organization, the more successful you get, unfortunately, you get further and further away from the customer. You get further away. You go like to manager, you get to head of, you go to director. You spend less and less time with customers. You spend more and more time looking at board papers that tell you what's really going on instead of what's going on. So using that same principle, I said to my team, you need to get out there and you need to get onto the front line and you need to go and spend time in other departments. Because if you don't understand them first, how can you expect them to understand you? What always amazes me in organizations is the number of people that don't network internally. Networking isn't for just businesses. It isn't for just networking with other companies. You should be networking in your organization. Otherwise, it's like living life without a passport. Like you live in your little border, you live in your little team, your little department, and you never step out of it. But when you go on a holiday, how many of you like to sample the local food? Yeah. How many of you like to travel around and look at the local architecture? Maybe learn the language, right? It's no different in an organization. When you network, you're breaking borders and you're going traveling. You're learning language in another department, in another team, in another place. You're learning how they do things so you can have a better appreciation of them. And what do you think happens when you understand them better? What happens? This is the interactive bit in case you didn't know. You're able to better influence what happens with them. When you understand somebody first, you're better able to influence them. So when you then go and try and influence people to do things, when you then try and get them to work with you on a project, because you're able to speak from their perspective, use their language, use terms that they might use, understand the problems that they're having, you're putting yourself in their shoes. Have you heard that phrase before? People always say, put yourself in the shoes. So this is about putting yourself in their shoes. The more you can do that, the greater you build an understanding and the more likely you're able to influence. I built my career on buying people cups of coffee. It's a really cheap way to get it, cheaper than uni. I built my career on buying people cups of coffee, sitting down with them and asking them questions, understanding what they were about. And don't be afraid to ask the dumb question. I promise you now, you know that dumb question that you're thinking of and thinking, I shouldn't really ask that? Somebody else in the room is thinking about that same dumb question. They're just not brave enough to ask it. So ask those questions, be curious, not judgmental, build a better understanding of other people, and be consistent. And if you do those three things, I think you'll build out a really successful career. And last thing I want to leave you is this. People might forget the details. People will forget what you said. They will forget what you did. But they will never forget how you made them feel. Memory is powerful. People act on their memories. So as you build your brand, building a brand is one thing, but make the experience match your brand.